Alright, here's the rock path project at its beginning. The pathway is going to go follow these flags here, run kind of across the slope down to here, and then where we're bringing in all the rocks, it's going to kind of cut across. So I wanted to take a before shot before the weeds are down and the rocks are up. This is what it's going to look like traversing. And before, come down here. Footing's a little tricky right now. Hopefully this will all be very smooth. Let's get the rocks in, lots of heavy lifting. And this will be a nice wide taper down here at the bottom. Once again, looking up at the hill. So this hill's about a 55 to 60% grade. Pathway's gonna kind of be nice and wide here at the bottom. Slowly taper up together here. So move around this stacked wall of concrete and then follow these flags all the way up the hill. And then along the downhill and uphill borders of the path will be vetiver grass. And there'll also be 3 strips of vetiver, one there, one in the middle of the slope, and one running across the bottom to help stabilize it since it's very, very loose soil. So that's the project at the beginning. Okay, this is the end of day 1, stacking rocks, working the path. Definitely learned a hard lesson, like work with gravity. So next time we're gonna have them delivered up at the top of the hill, not the bottom. Started with this curved kind of wall here with the heaviest, most oddly shaped rocks, since they wouldn't be good for steps anyways, but using that to hold, kind of basically use it create a buttress for the rest of the steps. So we've got 2 different spots where you can step off. You can come down here and then the pathway splits. You can walk down this way to the gate and then this way to the other corner of the yard. So it'll be nice. This will be a great spot here for a fruit tree guild, some shade, and then lots of space for creeping ground covers in between the rocks. A whole range of different microclimates will be had, I'm sure. And the plan for the rocks is on the edges, both the uphill and the downhill edges, as this thing winds up the hill, and especially on this part where it's traversing across the slope, is to have vetiver planted every 4 inches on the downhill side. So effectively it's going to have a biological pylon holding the rocks in place. Like, they're heavy, they'll work for, you know, a year or 2, but this slope is very friable. So yeah, vetiver is the long-term solution there to hold them in place. But this is the step up. We come here to the choice, and we got a 1, 2, 3, and basically from this spot, path is going to kind of meander just a little bit, cruise up that way, and hook again up at the top, and be done. So we're about a third of the way done. All right, here we are at the end of the 2nd day of rock work and the 1st day of vetiver install. So here's the buttress that we installed on day 1. And as we're cruising up, getting into new territory. So here, might be hard to make out a little bit, but basically a lot of gravity glue, a lot of rocks that are stacked on top of one another. You can see it more from this side of the hillside, but basically both the downhill cut edge and the uphill cut edge of this entire pathway will all be planted with vetiver slips. So we can cruise up here. Heavy boulders. This is where we're unfinished still, so we got about 11 more steps to go. Wind up this corner. And then we also got the main frame irrigation in for the vetiver. This is our first row, planted about 18 inches back from the eroding edge of the slope. And then we're going to do, for every 18 vertical inches, another row down the slope. So we'll probably end up with a good 6 or 7 rows, something like that. And these vetiver slips are planted at about, again, 4 to 5 inch intervals. They're being fed by a 1/4 inch drip line with emitters every 6 inches. And then at the end of each line, there's a little tiny 1/4 inch valve that can be turned. It's fed at both ends, so you can shut off that line or eventually remove it once the vetiver is well established. This 1/2 inch line right here is the main frame irrigation, so that's going to help feed the rest of the vetiver contour strips. There's another wing of it that kind of cruises down here down the fence that'll run across to the other vetiver strips. They were planted directly into probably 3 inches of steer manure and then just topped with the native soil, and then all of it was underlaid with a 12-inch wide piece of burlap. So hopefully went with that just to protect it from any possibility of root eating vermin. and eventually that'll biodegrade. We'll see how it goes. There's no gophers here that we can see, but there are ground squirrels. So it'll be fun to watch these guys grow, take off. So we've got the top line, which is set about a foot back from the eroding edge. Then we have the next line right on the edge, so we get a really solid cap. And the next one is 18 vertical inches down. We just used a grade level to figure out where that was, and then peg level all the way across the slope. And we did another one 18 inches down from that. We'll probably fit in 2 or 3 more on the rest of the slope on this side, and maybe 2 or 3 more on this side of the pathway right here. Yeah. Got irrigation lines running on both sides of the path, but this is kind of initially what it looks like. Right now I've got it on a decent irrigation cycle, since this is a south-facing hillside and it's full-on summer here in Southern California. But as soon as possible, come fall, we definitely want to start tapering that back and really training these guys deep. So we'll be excited to see that progress and see how it goes. All right, here we are, day I think 5 of vetiver planting. Got the whole front part of the slope done all the way down to the bottom, and then mirror image on this side, cruising up. Everything's on its first round of irrigation, and next time we'll be popping in the slips right along the edge of the rock walkway on both the uphill and downhill side. So we'll see how that comes out, but it looks really beautiful both from the bottom and the top. These plants are amazing. So they're really going to help to secure this hillside and ultimately turn it into a productive terrace that we can plant other things on. Here's the summary of the last day of vetiver planting and pathway construction. So all the vetivers are in. Final irrigation is in on the steps. We planted a experimental, somewhat drought-tolerant zoysia grass in the crevices between the rocks. This is definitely a steeper section, but still feels good. So that's the trip down the walkway. And looking at the slope, now fully stabilized with in total 7 contour rows of vetiver. And then if we look at the lower section here, you can see what we put in today, the last vetiver. So we have the tillers running on the kind of downslope side of the pathway, and then also a line on the upside. So those are all going to lock in the soil right at the base of the rocks just to help it glue together. And then we'll be trying several different drought tolerant, creeping type herbs or ground covers in the crevices between the rocks. So right now we're just trying that zoysia grass up top, but might be trying some Herniaria glabra and maybe some creeping elfin thyme, possibly some succulent ground covers. And then we just got irrigation lines running alongside to help the vetiver establish, but ultimately we'll be pulling that irrigation schedule back within about 2 weeks. So there we go. Phase 1 of the project is complete. A lot of really, really heavy rocks. And this is what the top looks like going up. This last rock was the biggest and most heavy. So now we got it in place.